Committee of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. I would like to start by welcoming any members of the press and public who may have joined us today. I don't think there are any in the room, but for anyone who is watching online, you are very welcome. The Combined Authority allows filming and photography at its meetings, so feel free to take pictures. I'm not sure whether anyone's going to be taking pictures, but feel free if you wish to. And I would ask that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place. There are no fire drills scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will move to the muster point, which is in the High Street. I would remind members and officers that this meeting will be recorded. So I don't have any chair's announcements, and the next is apologies for absence. Apologies have been received from Councillor Gilderdale, Councillor Hemraj and Councillor Pettit. Councillor Hemraj's substitute, Alison Jones, has sent her apologies, but Councillor Jason McNally will be substituting, and you're very welcome. It's very nice to have you with us this morning. I think we probably therefore don't have subs for Councillors Gilderdale and Pettit, which means we are slightly light on numbers, but I think we are quorate, so that's excellent. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest on any of the items for today? Katie? No.
Yeah, same interest as last time we met. A director of a CIC that is probably going to be collaborating with others on the FE Cold Spots Fund. So just in case it comes up this morning, I just want to make that clear. And I'm happy to step out and be at your disposal.
I don't think we're making any decisions on it this morning. So
that's fine.
I don't think you're going to need to leave.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay and listen to any updates. That's great. Thank you very much. Item 3 on the agenda is minutes and the action log. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes for accuracy initially? I don't see any comments for accuracy, so I will assume that we are happy to sign them as an accurate record. And then, are there any questions on the action log? Again, I don't see any hands, so we will take that as accepted. Item 4 on the agenda is public questions. One public question has been received today from Mr. Carpen. It has been circulated to members and published on the CPCA website. Mr. Carpen is unable to join us today, so I will ask the governance manager to read out the question. Thank you, Jo.
Chair. The question is, re-item 1.4 of the Combined Authority Board meeting of the 8th of June 2022, Mr. Carpen asked the board about the possibility of a new school of dentistry being established by Anglia Ruskin University in Peterborough. The Mayor responded, I am pleased to share that ARU are exploring whether they might be able to open a school of dentistry at one of their campuses in the medium term. Now that coming up to 3 years will have passed since I tabled that question, and since the new government has been in office for over 6 months, please could I ask for a progress update from the Combined Authority and through them ARU Peterborough, including any correspondence the CPCA has had with the Department for Health and Social Care, with the dental authorities, and or whether this is something that the CPCA will be following through on given its expanding growth remit combined with the chronic shortages of dentists in the CPCA area.
Thank you very much for that, Jo. I think Andrea, were you going to? I'm happy to respond and read out Councillor not Councillor Renton, Ross Renton's response if that's helpful, unless you would prefer to. Okay. Can I have a copy of it though so I can see what it's Thank you. So I do want to thank the officers for making sure that we've got a response to this from Ross Renton, who is the principal of ARU Peterborough. And what Ross has replied is that the Department for Health and Social Care are out to consultation on their 10-year plan, and closely aligned to this is the intention to refresh the long-term workforce plan. Once the Department for Health and Social Care and NHS England have determined their approach to the dental workforce, ARU will be able to outline their contribution, which is likely to involve collaboration with the NHS and other universities in the Eastern region. So that's the response from Ross Renton, who is the ARU principal in Peterborough. I think it is important to be clear that the setting up of a school of dentistry is quite a long way outside the remit of this committee. I don't think we would be able to do that. It's helpful to be able to have a response from Ross on it, but it's not the kind of thing that we could take responsibility for. Thank you very much. I'll pass that back. Okay, thank you to Mr. Carpen for his question. And then we will move on to item 5, which is the Combined Authority Forward Plan. Are there any questions or comments on the forward plan, or should we take that as noted? I don't see any questions, so we will note the forward plan and we will move on to the Director's Highlight Report, which is definitely a highlight of the morning. Andrea, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So my highlight report is a verbal update for you today, which I apologise for. But the week before last, I was busy pulling together the Youth Guarantee Trailblazer proposal, which has been shared as an exempt item in the packs that you've received this morning. But I will give a verbal update on a few key things to make you aware of. The first one is to inform you that 2 weeks ago, we were informed by the Department for Education that we were to receive a cut to our adult skills funding. This is a national cut that the DfE are doing across the board. So all mayoral combined authorities are affected, as well as grant funded providers by the DfE. They are anticipating taking in the region of £25 million out of the adult skills budget nationally. For us, that will mean in the region of a 3% cut to the funding that we receive in the adult skills budget. And we're currently in the process of looking at how we can manage that or not. But it's something to make members aware of. We've also got plans to potentially write to the Secretary of State for Skills to just express our disappointment in that cut, especially when it really kind of goes against the ambition of growth and the ambition of the growth of opportunities in that space. And also the Youth Guarantee Trailblazer, which we're hoping to deliver successfully, will very much depend on adult skills funding to enable those young people to participate in provision. So there is somewhat of a disparity between what's happening there. So that's just something to make members aware of, and we will report back on that once we're clear on the true impact of that funding cut. The other piece of news to make members aware of is in regards to the national reform around apprenticeships, which we're monitoring quite closely. There has been a relaxation of the need for adult apprentices, so this is 19 plus, to complete maths and English qualifications as part of their apprenticeship standard. Previously, that has been a real block for some adult apprentices who may have vocationally achieved the apprenticeship standard, but they just cannot get through their maths or English exams. So the government have decided to relax the requirement for maths and English for adult apprentices. And they're also considering shortening apprenticeships to a minimum of 8 months. At the moment, the minimum time is 12 months. So we're keeping an eye on that and working through our Growth Works for Skills team to support employers that we're working with on those changes. I'm pleased to report that the Combined Authority Board approved the Adult Skills Commissioning Strategy that we looked at our last meeting. So that is going ahead, and this week we hope to launch our procurement for our independent training providers to deliver adult skills provision going forward. So that's a key update. Another key piece of news, some of you may be familiar with the third sector community grants that have been issued in the last year, and that is funded out of an innovation grant which we ring fence as part of our adult skills funding. And I'm pleased to say that we'll be going ahead with that programme again from the 1st of April this year, which will make £300,000 available for the third sector to deliver community skills provision. So that will be a kind of open and application process for the third sector to apply for, which is a really positive thing. And at our next committee in June, we'll be pleased to bring a report on the outcomes of the last round of funding and what potentially has been secured for the next round of funding. Another key update was on the 12th of February, we co-hosted a roundtable with the Department for Education regarding employer investment in skills. Alexis, how many people did we have in the end?
46.
46 participants in that roundtable, which was a fantastic level of participation, a lot from employers who really had the opportunity to look at working with the DfE to shape the future policies around employer investment in skills. And we were one of 2 combined authorities that had those roundtables with the Department for Education, West Midlands Combined Authority being the other. So we were very proud to participate in that and actually be able to offer that opportunity to our employers locally. So we'll know more on the outcome of that soon, I should think. We were expecting last week the Secretary of State to publish her vision for skills ahead of the publication of a skills strategy, which the government are hoping to publish probably May, June time. It didn't get published last week, so hopefully it will come out this week. But we are expecting that strategy to talk about the vision to talk about how the government will use the likes of Skills England and the relationships with mayoral combined authorities to strengthen and make clearer the skills landscape across the UK. So we will share that with members once that has been published. So they're the key updates from me. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Does anyone have any immediate questions? If not, I just wondered whether you could tell us a little bit. You did mention it, all the work that you've been doing on the youth guarantee, but I think it was only 1 or 2 sentences, and I wondered whether you should. I know that you've done. Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine then. In that case, we'll leave it for that. Yeah, that's great. Sorry. Explains why you would only spend a sentence on it, and that I know how much work's been going into it. Any other questions on Andrew's report? No? Amazing. Brilliant. We will move on. I think my estimate of how long the meeting might take might be out. Charlotte, I know that you have been doing lots of things on the skills board as well. So I think you're next on the agenda. Do you want to introduce or just tell us about the update of the work of the board and present the revised terms of reference? Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As reflected in the paper that has been issued with a number of changes to officers across the Combined Authority, and also Andrea's clearly been leading the charge on making sure that we take advantage of lots of positive initiatives that government are outlining. We had felt that it was time to re-energise and reinvigorate what was the Employment and Skills Board. One of the first actions that we've done by reviewing the terms of reference was to make sure that we were in keeping with the taxonomy of this committee. So one of the first steps to note is that we have migrated, or we propose to migrate a new title of the Skills and Employment Board in line. But the more important parts really is the hard work that Andrea and the team have put behind the scenes to make sure that the terms of reference reflect what is the current landscape, making sure that ultimately we've got a concise set of objectives that very clearly show that the Skills and Employment Board is there to utilise data, to be evidence-led, to make sure that we are thinking about some distinct communities, our learners, our local communities, but also our business community, and making sure that skills and access to talent development are equitable, ultimately to make sure that we've got a prosperous region. We have also just reviewed the proposed membership of the board and making very clear that certain groups are there to represent that group. So as an example, further education, it's key that we've got representatives from further education, but they are there also making sure that they collaborate and represent their peers from other further education establishments across the region. So Andrea presented the terms of reference to our board. And it was a resounding success. There was no tweaks whatsoever. So today I believe it's here for the committee to review.
Thank you very much indeed, Charlotte, for that introduction and for all the work that you and Andrea have done on this over the past couple of months. it was a couple of councillors and I were just discussing it before the meeting actually, and the need to make sure that there's a really good relationship between the newly energised Skills and Employment Board and this committee, and making sure that the relationship between those works really effectively. Are there any questions on the paper or on the terms of reference? No question. Nick.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm coming to a bit late, but I just was looking at the makeup of the board and I'm just double checking it, but is there any union representation? And the next question would follow that up would be, was this something that was explored? Was this something that's been offered? And I speak as somebody who has spent 4 years trying to engage union colleagues sometimes on this with regard to being actually before the business board. You know, I've often said that unions should have a role on the business board. That hasn't been forthcoming for various reasons, union representation, but it's just something I feel, perhaps unsurprisingly, would benefit. And it was a question back, is that something we could explore? I'm happy to help with that. It's just something I feel is important.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. Absolutely. I think that's something we can explore. I think somewhere in my mind I did have unions down to go on there, but they've obviously dropped off the list. But no, I'd really appreciate your support with that if we could look at engaging them on the board, because I think it is very important, as is the kind of membership of kind of trade bodies and sector bodies as well. So unions would be more than welcome. So that's something that Charlotte and I can pick up with you. Thank you.
That's very helpful. I think it would be quite possible to have some of the representatives from that are there kind of under some of the other categories might also be members of unions or allied to unions. So there may be other ways of doing that as well. Thank you. That's a good thought. Any further comments? Just a quick question for me. There's an agreed membership under these terms of reference. Do you already have that membership, or is that now something, once we've passed this, that we will need to work out what it is?
Not a factual answer. I think probably it's a guess. We're 90% there, but again, as we've seen changes across CPCA offices, we've also seen changes of individuals who have historically sat on the board, who have perhaps moved into different forms of employment. So it's probably something that we would have been doing anyway. A review of, depending on the outcome of this morning, where are we? Where do we need to move to?
It's really helpful. Thank you. So assuming we pass the terms of reference today, and I don't see any great indication that people don't want to pass them, the next step will be for you to make sure that the membership does align with the agreed membership. And I mean, there are clearly quite a lot of people who could tick various different boxes on this list of people that they're representing. So we can, but some thought can be given to that after the meeting. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Are there any further comments or questions? Fantastic. I think in that case, we have been asked to approve the terms of reference. I'm happy to propose this. Could I have a seconder for approving the terms of reference? Thank you, Ian. And if we can now vote on approving these as the terms of reference for the new Skills and Employment Board. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. So thank you very much indeed, everybody. And we will look forward to hearing the update on the membership at our next meeting, perhaps. Lovely. The next item on the agenda is the Skills and Employment Committee Combined Authorities Adult Education Functions Amendment Order. Andrea, just that sounds a joy.
Yeah. So hopefully this item will be reasonably short and sweet. So this is an amendment order to the order that is given to us by the Department for Education relating to the devolution of skills and employment. And the amendment order that's been proposed by the Department for Education is to allow combined authorities to utilise its adult skills funding to be spent on a range of technical qualifications, which we'd previously had to apply to spend the funding on it separately. So the amendment order is that they're just going to give us the authority to be able to use the funding on that type of provision. So this, for me, is absolutely. Let's sign up to that, because that actually reduces a level of bureaucracy in terms of the administration of the skills funding. And so we've been asked to formally accept the amendment to the order and to formally agree that actually it's not going to put any additional burdens on the combined authority because of that order. And once the department has received formal acceptance from mayoral combined authorities, this will go through Parliament and we'll make a formal amendment to the order that we receive. So I'm recommending to the committee that we accept this, because it's a positive thing, and we just need a vote on it this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Andrea about the order? Nick? I'm not sure you're all over having your microphone on.
So all over the detail. It's just an interesting point in 2.3 about the look, I'll support it, but it's more about making sure that we aren't creating a particular challenge for a particular vulnerable group of the community with regard to those who are on EHCPs, education, health and care packages. Because I'm reading this, it's for those who are on an EHCP. It also talks about people who are actually in detention. Okay, very different group maybe, but the EHCP, they would continue to be funded to access these opportunities from the 16 to 19 budget. If it only goes up to 16 to 19, that's a 6-year shortfall for people who are, talk about things like neurodiversity, who require the benefit of an EHCP, but are not going to be able to necessarily access these training opportunities. Or am I reading that wrong?
You're not reading it wrong, but there are nuances to adult funding.
Right.
So at the moment, the devolved budget we get for adult skills, we can't use that on adults with education, health and care plans,
right,
because the funding for those individuals is already ring fenced out of the 16 to 19 budget.
It's with counties
and the high needs budget. So they won't be at a disadvantage at all. There will be no change. This is business as usual in terms of how the funding works. There is a nuance in that it says 16 to 19 and education, health and care plans go up to 25. And they do still receive funding up to the age of 25, even though it's called the 16 to 19 budget. So it is very confusing.
It's explained. Yeah. Okay, well, as long as it's fine. Thank you.
To be reassuring, I think the funding available for individuals up to 19 and up to 25, if they do have an EHCP, is considerably more generous, and the range of training options that they have available is larger. So they are better off being funded under the 16 to 19 provision than they would under this.
Even better. But my concern was that somehow they wouldn't be able to access these training opportunities, where ironically, particularly if somebody's particularly highly skilled in terms of neurodiversity and technical need, they might be really well placed to get these sorts of opportunities. Okay, fine. All right. Thank you. Thanks, man.
Just to clarify, would this be the budget that would be affected by the reduction of 3%? Thank you.
I haven't heard any concerns. Any concerns other than Nick's, which I hope we have laid, and I think Nick was happy to vote for it anyway. So, if we could now move to the vote. Again, I'm happy to propose. Could I have a seconder? Thank you, Sam. And all those in favour of amending the order, if you could indicate now. Again, I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Right, we will move on to Skills Bootcamp Wave 6 plan. Again, no, Nick, sorry, Nick.
Thank you, Chair. So a paper's been submitted with regards to Wave 6 skills boot camps. Recommendations there to update, well, the purpose of the paper is to update you on the progress of the Wave 6 submission to the Department for Education and our intended plans for the Wave 6 allocation. When this paper was submitted, there hadn't been a confirmation from Department for Education of the grant we were going to be awarded for Wave 6. So that's for 2025-26 financial year. I'll give an update on the paper and then I'll update on the Department for Education position. So Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, we've been delivering skills boot camps now since September 2021. So that's three or four waves, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 waves so far. Wave 6 would be the 5th wave of skills boot camps that we deliver. Skills boot camps are in place for those are unemployed, employed, those seeking career changes, those who are self-employed, and again for those who are 19 plus. And the Combined Authority have been delivering skills boot camps or commissioned skills boot camps to be delivered in a range of sectors from electric vehicle maintenance, project management, software coding, engineering, environmental management, and most recently in Wave 5, the newest wave that's gone out, we've added some mental health support boot camps to that provision as well. The Wave 6 bid that was submitted quite a while ago now was quite an ambitious one. So for Wave 3 and Wave 4 and Wave 5 of skills boot camps, we had been awarded £2.8 million for each of those. The Wave 6 bid was submitted for £3.5 million. And last week, on Wednesday of last week, we received confirmation from the Department for Education that we had been awarded the full grant of £3.5 million. So it wasn't in time to come into this paper that we had the confirmation from Department for Education, but we have had that confirmation from them since. That does mean that we can start making plans. Without the confirmation from Department for Education of what our 2025-26 allocation was, it's very difficult to plan moving forward because, as Andrea has already said, where funding is being cut in certain places, you don't want to make plans that you then can't fulfill. So the paper lays out some intentions for what we would like to do had we been awarded the 3.5 million, and we have been awarded that 3.5 million. So the paper talks about applying something called Flex to our Wave 5 training providers and boot camps. What Flex is it allows training providers to continue their delivery from 2024-25 into 25-26. So we're in a situation at the moment with our Wave 5 delivery that nearly half of our courses are over 2/3 full. That was at the end of January. And there are some providers, because skills boot camps have to run for a certain length of time, some of our providers have said, actually, we can't enroll any more learners onto those courses because we don't have enough time to complete them. What Flex enables us to do is to continue enrolling learners onto those courses as long as they achieve certain milestones by the 31st of March. So where these courses have been successful, we can continue that momentum into 2025-26, which is really important. The paper also lays out that in the contracts that we issue to our training providers for Wave 5, that we have the option to extend those into 2025-26. So not necessarily having to go through a procurement exercise in that purposes. Where those providers have delivered successful and impactful skills boot camps, we can look at the performance data to say, actually, we want to continue that and extend that quite seamlessly. So what this decision means from Department for Education to award us this money is that we can kind of seamlessly move some of our provision into next year. There's no stop-start to skills boot camps, which is really important because training providers rely on momentum and that word of mouth and that marketing to go through. So that's something that we're looking to put in place as well. And of course, as this decision has now come in, there will be a procurement exercise that we undertake as well for new provision that comes through. There's provision that we identify through labour market information that actually could be really impactful to add to the offer for 2025-26. So that's something that we'll look to do. Now we've got this decision in place. I think that's the update to share.
Thank you so much, Nick. And this is very much a good news story. So it's really excellent. Sam.
That's unlucky. Thank you. I think this is really helpful. I think the proposal to utilise the flex opportunities and continue existing contracts, given the timescales and rules and bureaucracy involved in the bootcamp funding waves, aren't necessarily entirely seamless. I think that's a really sensible way of helping kind of cut through that. Retaining what's working. I think you've spoken really helpfully as to the process behind a continuation to extend contracts, which otherwise I was keen to ask to unpack a little. And I sort of draw attention, if I've understood correctly as well, the additional flexibilities we'd be taking for Wave 6 do allow us to look to mitigate the Adult Skills Fund reduction as well, where we see value in doing that with existing providers. So if I've understood that correctly, that's helpful. If not, I'd be grateful for any clarifications. But no, I'll be very pleased to support this.
Do you want to say anything about that point about the
yeah, I missed that, sorry, in the update. So there are 3 of our FE colleges that are already, well, one of them is already delivering skills boot camps, College of West Anglia. 2 others have already, prior to knowing about the reduction in ASF funding, had already expressed an interest in getting involved in those as well. So yeah, through provisional conversations, and they have only been provisional conversations because we haven't had confirmation. I think we were anticipating not being successful for the full grant amount in light of the situation. The fact that we've got it is a very pleasant surprise, and it does give us more opportunity to build relationships and make the funding go further, really. So yeah, a couple of the other FE colleges have spoken to us about that. For Wave 5, we have got an independent training provider who delivers ASF involved as well through a direct award. So there is starting to become a little bit more of an overlap between our ASF provision and our skills bootcamp provision, which again helps that continuity of skills across the region. Whereas what had been in the past, it had been a separate set of skills bootcamp providers and a separate set of AS. That's starting to cross over now, which is helpful and important to the footprint in the region.
Thank you, Nick.
Well, first of all, Nick, Andrea, congratulations on your progress and landing the full grant. That's absolutely has to be acknowledged straight away. I've got a question with regard to be they independent providers or whatever format. Are these courses delivered within the geographical coverage of Cambridge and Peterborough, or are they offered sometimes elsewhere, but they are offered to the residents of Cambridge and Peterborough? So it's just a clarification point on that. And then finally, and like a moth to the light, as I look to your list, you couldn't have made it better for me by putting a bus driver at the end, and to, dare I say, so with the ability of flex and acknowledging that within recent times, there's a little bit of a story going around. We might need a few more buses and we might need a few more bus drivers. Is there an opportunity here, and how are you addressing it? Not just by providing for bus driver training, but to increase it. And is that something that I can make a request for? I mean, I'm sure others would around here say there's just as many other areas, but seems quite important as a combined authority driving the narrative around an enhanced public transport system on the buses, bus drivers, and indeed those who repair buses is going to be an important role in this area. So, a few questions there. Appreciate any answers. Right?
I'll put an answer in, and I think it's only fair to say at this point. Thank you for the congratulations. Our colleague Emma Cave put the bid together for Wave 6 over the summer, and clearly she did a fantastic job because it was so convincing to Department for Education. In response to the bus driver, I'll carry on with that. As part of this bid, Emma herself. I'm an interim skills program lead. So I came into this post in September. Emma was putting this bid together over the summer. She already started the conversations with the transport team about the bus drivers. And we've got a conversation to pick up with the transport team on that front. So that's not just words on a page. They are conversations that have happened, but we now need to start mobilising them quite quickly. In answer to your third question, yes. So we've got training providers that are national training providers, international training providers in some places. They offer skills boot camps across many regions, and our residents are invited to take part in effectively national programmes, but they utilise the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough funding to offer those places. There are training providers. We have one training provider that's running a course out of the Aliyah Future Business Centre in Peterborough. So there is provision also that is very much Cambridgeshire, Peterborough based. So it's a bit of both online delivery, face-to-face delivery.
Clarifications, and very pleased that I think reflecting on it, knowing the journey of the last 4 years, although the skills boot camps have often been seen as quite a success, the fact that the pivot that we've done in terms of taking more of the, how can I say, the responsibility in-house to control where the investments are made, obviously with your team and obviously, as you say, Nick, through Emma, I'm very pleased to hear that it then allows us to think creatively, even within our own organisation. I mean, you could, for a conversation about bus drivers with transport, you could also be talking to officers within the organisation who are focused on delivering net zero targets, which is very much part of our combined authority, and how that offers up an opportunity around employment and skills training. And so the fact that it's happening makes me very happy. So thank you.
I'm just going to pick up on that point about where we were a couple of years ago, because actually I think there is a really, really good news story here in terms of the skills boot camps. And my recollection is that a few years ago, we were not able to spend all of the money that we had bid for, partly because of the way in which government were procuring it. But it was the whole stop-start nature of the funding that made it extremely difficult to get providers and learners into the system set up and the training provided and then back out again within the year. And I think the fact that the Combined Authority have got much better at managing that process, despite the fact that we still get 1 year settlements, which is deeply frustrating and may stop soon, let's hope. But it's really difficult to organise for these programmes to build kind of knowledge and teams of learners who will want to come forward and trust that the course will be good and that they'll go on it, if they keep coming to an end at the end of the financial year and then we have to set up a new one. And so the work that's been done in the Combined Authority to smooth that process, I think, has been really, really important. And it's great to see that having done that work and been really consistent about spending the money well for the last 2 years, we now have a bit more confidence from central government that we can spend some more, and that is absolutely what we need. And I think, huge congratulations to the whole of the skills team for that process. And some of those people are people who've left. It's been a process that's happened over the last 3 years, and it's been really, really important. Sam.
It just briefly on a similar vein, I agree, and it's not just our public transport intentions. I think that the list of areas within which there's been made provision for in 3.6 in the paper feels to me a good strategic fit for what we're trying to support and encourage as a combined authority in terms of our wider economy. And clearly that's not a coincidence, it's a reflection of the hard work that's been done over the last couple of years. So just to add my thanks to that, to the officer team.
Just going to say one other thing, which is that if just in case there's anyone from the Department for Education listening, it would be even easier to do this if we didn't have single year settlements. So it's just worth making that point. We have worked very hard to make it work from a single year settlement point of view. Multi-year settlements would be so much better. Rob, did you want to come in on that?
Using the time chart, it was just to say that that's certainly the direction of travel from government, both in terms of the shorter term with a multi-year settlement, but also the integrated settlements that are available to established strategic authorities include skills as a single flexible pillar. So we get both multi-year and flexibility between AEB, skills bootcamp, etc. So big exciting things in the future. Just need to get there.
Thank you. Just two questions. It's really good that the range of sectors and a big opportunity for employers and learners. I just wanted to know, do they graduate with some sort of tangible qualification at the end of this that they can put on their CV? And the other question I had is whether there's any qualitative research done on the outcomes for both the learners and employers to evaluate the success of the boot camps. Thank you.
So with skills boot camps, some do leave with a qualification and some don't. So there's a great level of flexibility, which is actually very helpful, because some employers who work with us and training providers to design a skills boot camp don't necessarily need somebody with a qualification, but they need them to spend the time learning the skills to be able to then get into the job. So some do, some don't. In terms of your second question, which is completely flipped out of my mind. Sorry, what was your second question?
Qualitative.
The evidence. Yes, we do have that. So we've been tracking and monitoring that for each wave of the delivery of the boot camps, and we're able to report back on how many of the participants progressed into full-time employment, how many went into volunteering, how many went into part-time employment. So we've got that information available to us, and that's part of the rigor that we're expected to deliver to the Department for Education in response to receiving the funding. And I believe we have brought a performance report for boot camps to the committee before, but we can plan to bring another one for June, which will also perhaps reflect on the wrap up of wave 5, which is currently being delivered. Because over time, as skills boot camps have been more refined and to some extent received more flexibilities, the provision nationally has become a bit more successful. So we've seen success and progress move through the various waves. So that's something we can look at bringing to a future committee.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions, and I haven't heard anybody not wanting to support these recommendations. We don't need to vote on recommendation A, but we do need to vote on recommendations B and C. They are on the papers. Is everyone, so I'm happy to propose them. Could I have a seconder? Eileen, thank you very much. And all those in favour of supporting recommendations B and C, if you could indicate that. And again, I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. And congratulations to Nick and the team for getting all the money from DFE. That's very exciting. Now we just have to get everyone through all the courses. Good. Item 10 is Connect to Work, which is Andrew.
I think Alexis is going to do a bit of an intro.
Alexis, hooray.
So items 10, 11 and 12, if it's okay with you, Chair,
I wanted to provide a little bit of a preamble because they're all working through the same mechanism and process, and I wouldn't like to repeat that 3 times and bore the socks off of everybody in the room. All 3 are subject to our single assurance framework, which is our governance framework that was introduced within the Combined Authority in 2024, designed to bring more consistency and transparency to the appraisal process of new projects and activities that are funded and delivered by the CPCA. Specifically, the SAF aims, or the single assurance framework aims to ensure that we are delivering value for money for taxpayers, that we are promoting transparency and upholding accountability within our programme design. Our single assurance framework follows guidelines set out by the English Devolution Accountability Framework, and are just to say that the appraisal process looks very closely at feasibility, both financially and operationally, to ensure alignment to regional priorities. So each of the 3 following papers, which are of course discrete projects and individual programmes, there's clear interconnectivities between the 3, but they are working through the same mechanism and process of governance in their development. All 3 papers are similarly being submitted to committee for noting, to ensure that all of our members are provided with information about the business cases that have been submitted, with a clear understanding of the approval processes that they are now subject to. So we can take each paper one by one and discuss the detail within them, but it just seemed to make sense to introduce them collectively for processes that they're part of.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Just in terms of the SAF process, are they then going, so they're coming here for us to comment on, and then are they going to the...
So they've all received an initial review through the internal panel.
Right.
They are here for your noting and hopefully your support and endorsement. They will then go to a formal investment committee in a couple of weeks' time. One of them, so Connect to Work specifically, will then go on to board for full approval.
Thank you. I think this is one of the, Sam and I both sit on the investment committee and have been asking, and you chair it, don't you, Nick? And there have been questions about what comes to that committee relates to the work of the other committees. So it is really good to see these papers coming to this committee at this stage. And I think that any kind of questions or further clarification, it will be much better if that's dealt with by people on this committee who have more knowledge about what's going on in the skills world than, I mean, given that half the investment committees are here as well, probably we could ask questions there, but it actually is much better if in feedback and any tweaks or changes can be done at this point, and then it goes to the investment committee. So I think my reason for saying that is just to say, actually, this is a really good moment for the skills committee to feed in. So even though we're not actually voting on these, this is the best time to try and get changes to these papers, so then they can move forward in a way that the committee is really supportive of. Rena. Right. I've been reminded that the business cases are all exempt. So if we want to talk in detail about the detailed business cases, I think probably the outline of the proposals though is, we can talk about that. Yeah, that's fine. Good. On which note shall I turn over to Andrew to introduce the first one?
I'm lucky. Okay, so I'm just going to give a quick summary of each of the proposals that are in here. The first one being Connect to Work. So this is a programme that we've spoken about quite a lot in this committee, actually, and this is the 5-year programme that's targeting economically inactive adults with health conditions and supporting them through a supported employment route into employment. So this programme, the business case really sets out the commitment from the Combined Authority to accept actually the grant that's coming. We do still need to go through a process with the Department for Work and Pensions to confirm exactly what our delivery profile will look like. And just to illustrate what that will look like, it's really looking at how many participants will join and complete and be in learning per month over the next 5 years. So you can imagine that's quite a process to look at profiling over time, to make sure that we're doing that with our strategic partners and to make sure that we're putting very realistic numbers, but at the same time being very ambitious about what we want to try and achieve. So there is still a process to ensure that the funding comes through from the Department for Work and Pensions, and to be blunt, it is a kind of bum on a seat model, that programme. So we won't be given a grant like we are for the Youth Guarantee Trailblazer in a big chunk of money. We will be given funding in arrears based on our delivery profile plan. So that's something to sort of note. However, on our initial workings of our profile, we are projecting in the region of 16 to 20 million over the 5 years, based on the proposed numbers. So that's Connect to Work. And at the moment, we're looking to start delivery probably September, October time of this year, subject to all approvals. Shall I go through all three and then take questions, or do you want to take questions as we go? Yeah.
Because I think they're although they're connected, they're not.
Yeah.
Questions on this one, Sam?
Thank you. I think the this is a direction of travel I think enormously helpful. I think in the proposal section 2.1, it just in summarising the programme, I think there are a couple of critical letters missing, because the government's national funding strategy is reducing economic inactivity rather than trying to reduce economic activity. Just proving that we've spotted your deliberate mistake, that we do read our papers. But I think that the area I'd be really keen that we, not least given our roles representing constituent councils here, as well as thinking more broadly on behalf of the combined authority, area I think it'd be really helpful to unpack is, given that while the local government landscape may be changing over the coming 5 years, which is not one for this morning, but whether in kind of current or future forms, constituent councils have linkages with a lot of the people who are in the target market, if I can put it like that, of the support here in terms of access to financial support and council services, among other things. So I'd be really interested in knowing how we're making sure that we're taking advantage of the opportunity to harness the links that our constituent councils have to help us kind of reach the right people and in the right way, and in providing as holistic a package as possible to connect people into work and get them across the various different kind of connected challenges to doing so.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sam. I think working with our constituent councils is absolutely crucial to the success of this programme. And since before Christmas, we've been working with officers of all of our constituent councils and senior leaders from the likes of the Chamber. So Charlotte has been involved, as well as leaders from DWP, to really think about how can we make this function best, building capacity within an existing system, but also recognising the challenges that already exist across the kind of work and health system, because this to me is more than a programme. This is about how can we really knit things together and join the dots locally to really benefit the individual who's going to participate in the programme. So we've had long conversations with partners. We recognise that the Integrated Care Board and Integrated Care Services has to be a strategic partner on this particular programme, as do our constituent councils. And where we know that there are WorkWell hubs being delivered successfully already, we are looking at working really closely with those hubs so that they can act as either a delivery partner or a triage service to identify individuals who can be put forward for the programme. This is a voluntary programme. It's not a mandated programme. So we really need our local community services to be working with us to identify the individuals who benefit most from it. So very much at the heart of it, as are employers. So, it's about creating a system that can really lead the charge across this. And I've been really pleased at the positive kind of reception I've had from those constituent councils so far. And I've shared the plans with chief executives and public sector leaders, and they've also been very pleased at the level of co-design and co-production that's going into this so far, and that will continue to run through the programme for the next 5 years.
Reflecting back, 4 years ago, there was very few measures that the combined authority took upon itself. It was the way it was set up. It was how many houses have been built, or by the combined authority responsible, sort of jobs, and a sort of this non-specific GVA. You're now, or we're the combined authority. We're now tasked with looking at economic inactivity. And I'm really keen to understand, where are those figures currently held? And then if we are, be it not through a statutory arm, but through a voluntary thing, and obviously voluntary, that's getting the people in who we want to support, but also targeting them. And that can be done through partners, and they're not necessarily our constituent members there. It could be third sector organisations. It could be, we talked about, it links in with the Integrated Care Board, but you could also think about how are we going to link in with people coming out of the prison service. So going back to my question is, these facts and figures are already held by a group somewhere, an organisation. When do they become our property, in terms of when do we get sight of them on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis? Once we are ultimately tasked with improving things, how often will we be expected to report back to either the organisation of the combined authority, but also to the government, who are tasking us with doing the job?
So the accountable body is the Department for Work and Pensions. So they hold the kind of data and the stats on how many adults nationally are economically inactive. But there's only so much of that they know, because there's a huge number of unknowns, because what they won't have is the detail on adults who are not claiming benefits, and therefore they're unknown. They're economically inactive. And to classify as economically inactive, the list is quite long, and it includes being retired, being a stay-at-home carer, being a student. So what we need to try and do is work with organisations to identify the group we're particularly interested in, which is those that are unemployed and are out of work due to health conditions. They want to work, they could work, but they just need support to get there. So that's our kind of target cohort. So the Department for Work and Pensions will require us to report back on our progress on a probably quarterly basis, if not monthly, and we'll be expected to work with them over the period of 5 years. It's a shared responsibility, because obviously they still, through Job Centre Plus, will take an element of responsibility for supporting those who are on universal credit, who are unemployed, seeking other kind of out of work benefits. But essentially we're tasked with the job of trying to find those hidden, unknown economically inactive adults, which is a much harder sort of job to have, and that will only be achieved through working with the third sector and partners who perhaps might already be engaged with them through other means. So, community venues might hold coffee mornings where they're engaging with adults in the community to get them out of the house and just to reduce isolation. And it's those environments where we might want to go and start having conversations about the possibility of gently introducing them to volunteering or being an active citizen in their local community, because for a lot of these adults, they'll be far from the labour market, and it will take quite a lot of steps to get them to where they need to be before they're ready. So this program will use things like social prescribing as a key mechanism to identify individuals. So we'll be working with GPs and other primary and secondary care services. So it's going to be a significant challenge, but I think there's a definite desire from multiple partners to make that work.
So then next question is capacity. Would do you then see two things here? An expansion in the workforce for the combined authority in whatever role, be it liaising with some of these third sector organisations, but actually physically people with a CPCA name badge, sort of using this as a base, but then going out into the community?
So what we're currently proposing is that we will have at least an additional full-time post within the combined authority that will sit within the skills team and will also be seconded into the integrated care service on a part-time basis as well. So it'll be a shared post. We're proposing that we would commission a prime organisation who will work with a consortium of providers, including third sector organisations and organisations who are already very skilled at engaging with these individuals and delivering the model of supported employment that's needed, because that's very specific from DWP. We have to deliver a fidelity-based supported employment model, which has to be quality assured. It has to be delivered in a specific way. So we will need to commission providers who are very skilled at doing that. So the proposal would be that we'd work with a prime organisation and a consortium of providers to be able to do that. Based on the delivery profile and based on the detail that DWP have provided us, we know that at its peak of delivery, there would need to be an increase in up to 60 work coaches across the region to work with the volume of adults who will be participating in the programme. And that's because their caseloads would need to be reasonably low to enable them to give the sufficient support that's needed on the programme. So this is a significant investment and a significant programme of work that will also need significant workforce development, because I'm sure we probably have got 60 people out in the region who would be skilled to do this, but to deliver it to the standard that's expected and to deliver it within a system that's a little bit fragmented at the moment. We've got to work hard at strategically working within that system. It is going to be a significant challenge, but one that hopefully would be worth it.
Just, could you just explain what you mean by fidelity-based?
Yeah. So a fidelity model of supported employment is your kind of gold standard that's quality assured. So supported employment is a particular way of supporting individuals into work. And there are two different ways of doing it. I'll give you one way. One way is that a work coach will go to work with that individual person. They will help them to learn and understand the job, and they'll stay with them at work. So that individual's got significant support from that work coach. So the work coach will learn the job with them and they'll support the employer. They'll also, once the person's been hopefully employed permanently, the work coach will stay in touch with that individual and track and monitor their progress, and will be a port of call for the employer and the individual participant to really just enable a really smooth transition into work. So it's very intensive, and there are a number of quality standards that need to be achieved to deliver that programme. So fidelity is like the kite mark that the provider would need to achieve to demonstrate quality of provision delivered.
Thank you. Katie.
But really delighted with what you said about kind of how tricky it is to find these people. So obviously through Citizen Hub, we get people through the door who aren't involved, who aren't engaging with any formal institution, because it is really scary.
Yeah.
They're in a vulnerable position. So really reassured to hear that. My other thought is around, because this has the opportunity to be completely transformational and is a really exciting programme, but we need to probably be revving up employers or identifying those tame employers and getting them and the community groups involved in that co-design earlier rather than later, because employers are not often great at taking a punt on doing something new or different, especially at the moment when employment budgetary challenges are quite hot topics. So yeah, I'm happy to support in any way, but I think that work is going to take longer than we could probably think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Nick.
Appreciate you might not be able to answer this if it goes into too much detail, but you did refer to sort of Job Centre Plus there. Ironically, we know we have an office just below here where job centres have come in house here. So obviously we have a benefit of co-location there. But is the expectation, obviously there might be different ways to go out into the community and where people are working and where they need to be coached. It might be depend on wherever that opportunity is, north, south, east and west. But is there something here where job centres are going to become part of us redesigning what's the delivery of what's on offer at job centres? And is that what really ultimately this is about?
I'm not sure I can answer that specific question, but what I can say is that it's really important for Job Centre Plus to be involved in the design and delivery of this model, because they will need to know what's out there, so that when appropriate, they could refer people on. But quite typically, there are other programmes for people who are accessing Job Centre Plus support that they would be more likely to be referred on to, because this one is specifically targeting those that are not on benefits. And that's quite a change from a government perspective, because before there hasn't been this level of investment in supporting those that are not on benefits. So this is seen as a kind of preventative piece of work, so that ultimately those individuals don't end up on benefits and we can support them to transition in. I think we do know in a skills and employment space that the partnership and ways of working between mayoral combined authorities and Job Centre Plus is going to be strengthened. I think the planned merger between Job Centre Plus and the National Careers Service that's happening, that's something we're engaged in discussions with to keep up to date on what's happening there. So it is joining the kind of dots.
But we're not at the position yet where the combined authority is commissioning or in starting running job centres.
No,
not yet.
No.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrea. I think that's been a really helpful discussion. I don't see any further questions, and I think Eileen.
So quite often people with illness or disability require special provisions to be able to access work. So the access to work funding is usually DWP. So would that hold in this case, even if people aren't on benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the roles of the job coach, would be to make sure that the individual's accessing every level of support that they can, and access to work would certainly feature as part of the package. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I think we've had a useful discussion about that and can comfortably send it on to the next stage. The next one is item 11, which is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. And I think it's you again.
Alexis, you're right if I hand over to you on this one, because you've been leading this one.
Yeah, that's fine, Andrea. Okay, our UK SPF People and Skills project. So as explained, similarly going through the same process as Connect to Work. These three specific projects are going through the SAF as part of a much bigger business case proposal, which is being led on by colleagues in our business team, which outlines and illustrates the full UK SPF Transition Fund year's approach to delivering services. People and skills, we intend to continue to build on the three main work streams that we've delivered in the last financial year. So this paper is to outline our commitment to continuing those three main pieces of work. The first being our skills brokerage service, which maintains our relationship with our region of learning team that is currently based in the City Council. So working very, very specifically with the business community to develop the skills ecosystem and the connectivity within it. So essentially supporting the business community to engage with provision and potential learners and to grow their workforce effectively in the area, benefiting ultimately our residents as well as our business community. There's some very clear things in here specifically around our continued commitment to embedding digital skills pathways into both our local provision and also our business community's understanding. There's a very, very clear remit for this team to be the team that will lead forwards our work to support the business community to understand the changing the expected changes to apprenticeship reform and the levy that sits around that, how to navigate it currently, how to navigate it as it moves forwards. There's been quite a lot of work invested into apprenticeships, but we know that there's an awful lot more that we need to do, and especially as the system changes. That's our skills brokerage service. There are two other projects that we are putting forwards as part of the wider programme. One being our all age careers service, which again is a service that is in existence, provides a delivery of an employability programme in partnership currently with Reed. We've supported 300, 300. Sorry, numbers are hot off the press. Economically inactive, and apologies, I have just found that clearly our spell check did not like economic inactivity. I think it's because it's projecting into the future when we tackle these problems. So there is a typo there again, apologies. But if it's not clear, this programme does target economic inactivity, and we have worked with 300 residents over the last 12 months in partnership with Reed. And I think our progression into work is currently sitting at around 25%, but we've still got an awful lot of work to do, and we're still working with current learners on programme up until the end of March. So we'll continue to track and support those learners, and we're hoping to have a few more positive outcomes there. Our all age careers service is also where we try to join up the dots between adult careers information and the good work that already exists within our careers hub, working with education and schools. We have a talent portal online which will be revamped and continue to be developed to help our resident community to navigate the skills system alongside the work that already exists to support businesses to do the same. I think that's probably covered most points on the all age careers. And then last but absolutely not least, our very, very successful internship programme. Again, another one of the programmes that we've been able to fund through existing UK SPF funding, and we're really, really keen to continue to work with. Our internship programme closed our existing year's applications last week. We have 105 interns on programme, but we expect that number to creep up to 110 because we had a few that were kind of straggling at the last moment, and we just need to confirm they've started. The original target was 100. We wanted to make sure that we overachieved that. We think there's an awful lot more to do in this space. This programme has been very well received by the business community. We've worked very, very hard. The project lead has worked very, very hard to make sure that the programme does more than just provide grants to businesses. We have an embedded skills development programme, which is aligned to the LSIP, and using the mechanism of our digital skills colleagues. So kind of joining up all the dots across the system and creating real employment opportunities. Unfortunately, what I don't have to hand today is solid data on the progression rates for those that have taken part in an internship. I do know that they are exceptionally high, and I know that we'll be able to publish them this week in terms of those that have been able to sustain their position or move on quickly into a longer term and secure position as a result of taking part in the internship programme. And actually, even if I did have those numbers to hand, I probably shouldn't be announcing them because we are running our internship celebration event this week, which, Nick, you are part of, and we want to use that opportunity to celebrate the success of this year, the businesses that have been part of the programme, the residents that have been part of the programme, what they've achieved through meaningful and good quality work, and use it as a mechanism to launch next year too. So those are the three projects that make up the people and skills element of the UK SPF Transitional Fund proposal. They are part of a wider paper going to committee in a couple of weeks' time.
I'm sure there will be other questions in a minute, but a key thing for me, when you have that number about the progression rates, when you've done your kind of around the same time as that event, can you make sure that something is circulated to the rest of the committee?
Yes, absolutely.
We will not all be able
we're trying to hold the press for later this week, but we will be putting together I would like to call it an impact report. It probably wouldn't be quite as extensive as you might hope, but we will be doing some analysis and we'll be sharing that as well, and some case studies from the programme.
Fabulous report, Alexis. Thank you. How might we be able to use amazing initiatives like internships with new programmes like Connect to Work moving forwards?
So absolutely, we're limited on time with our internship program and Connect to Work. There is a window of opportunity for those that join the program early to benefit from the current internship investment. And I think there is an opportunity for us as a combined authority to use that window of time to explore whether those financial incentives are kind of game changers in supporting employers to make those positive behavioural choices that we want them to make in terms of offering those opportunities. I think there's also something for us to explore around the way that the digital badging and the skills development and the support that the team provides generally to employers can be adopted into the Connect to Work programme. Interestingly, this year our internship programme has been slightly tweaked to make sure that it aligns and provides progression opportunities from our other programmes, and we're currently trialling a piece of work with one of our bootcamp providers to see whether we can weave the programs together slightly more effectively to produce a longer term result for residents.
Thanks. If I've understood correctly, the business case then comes to the investment committee, as we've referenced. There's that sort of parallel tracking. So not to get into similar discussion we'd look to have there, but obviously, I mean, the very fact of the transitional funds appearing for SPF at all, which as I understand it wasn't previously planned or budgeted for, it is enormously welcome, because it gives us the flexibility to retain valuable programs. Obviously, there are different ways of potentially using it. I think what's set out here clearly looks positive, and then there's a sort of longer term conversation around how we kind of transition into embedding work thereafter, once we've got clarity about future funding settlements on whatever length basis. So just to add my thanks.
Yeah, I mean, great paper and all really exciting things going on, particularly the internships. That seems to have gone down exceptionally well. And just again, anecdotally, knowing people that have taken on interns from an SME standpoint, employing at the moment it's a bit brave for people, because it's a cost commitment at a time when everything's a little bit up in the air and confidence is not necessarily there in the market. From an employer standpoint, it seems to be giving them the confidence to sort of try before you buy. So the conversion rate that I've seen anecdotally in the market has been huge. The only bit of feedback I would give for sort of continuing bits is just around the awareness, I think, and that's it's an endless task, isn't it? How do you make sure that awareness is there? But yeah, again, I think it's been such a positive programme, and again, connecting to the Trailblazer work, it has allowed us to prove that something works before we can then wrap it into other programmes. So yeah, massive congratulations to the dean.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that is everyone on this one. Thank you very much indeed for all the work, and we can move that one on to the next stage. And then we come on to the Youth Guarantee, which I'm excited about. Andrea.
Thank you. So
The one thing I'd like to say on all three of these things is please be assured that we're working behind the scenes to wire all of these three things together, because there's so many opportunities if we are to do that. So the Youth Guarantee Trailblazer, as the paper sets out, is the government's ambition to support 18 to 21-year-olds who are NEET, essentially, so not in education, employment or training. And Cambridgeshire and Peterborough were identified as one of 8 places nationally to have a Trailblazer year, which will start from the 1st of April of this year and will give us a year of testing and learning and developing models of practice that will enable the region to better support those young people into work. So we're at a process where on the 14th of February, we submitted a proposal to, this is a joint departmental initiative between the Department for Work and Pensions and the Department for Education. We've submitted a proposal to try and secure up to £5 million of funding for the Trailblazer year. And the proposal very clearly set out the intent to establish a level of governance where we will have programme boards, one for Cambridgeshire and one for Peterborough. And those programme boards will actually report into this committee. So you'll be able to be very well cited on what is developed and what progress is being made. The other key proposals are to work very closely with Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough City Council, who are both the statutory body responsible for tracking and monitoring 16 to 18-year-olds who are NEET. So it's really important that we work with them. And currently, nationally, there is no single body responsible for 18 to 21-year-olds, and certainly the nudges that we're getting from both departments are that they will be looking to the combined authority to actually take on that role longer term. So beyond this Trailblazer year, I think we can well expect to become the statutory body responsible for tracking and monitoring and supporting those individuals. And beyond the initial Trailblazer funding that we will receive, we have been given a level of assurance that in the spending review there will be a continued commitment to the Youth Guarantee as a pledge from the government. So this one again is, it will be going to the investment committee to really accept and receive the funding. A huge amount of work is needed with all of our constituent authorities, partners, key stakeholders, employers. The list is endless in terms of who we need to work with to make this work. We will be recruiting an officer to work within the team on this particular programme as well. Very similar to Connect to Work, this is a very strategic kind of piece of work, as well as the kind of delivery of interventions that support those young people as well. So any other questions, please feel free.
I'm going to start off on this one. Clearly one of the key things about making this a success is identifying these young people. Presumably you're working very closely with the county on that?
Yes.
And also with schools and other providers.
Yeah, absolutely. Identifying these young people, it's a bit like Connect to Work. A lot of these young people will be unknown. They fall into the unknown group within the NEET cohort. So we'll have to absolutely work with our constituent, mainly County Council and City Council in Peterborough, but also across the board, but also with our potential FE partners, independent training providers, the third sector. Again, very similar organisations who will be supporting these young people through one way or another. But this one, I think, at our last committee, you'll remember we brought through the proposal to establish the Youth Forum, so that young people's voices are at the heart of the development of this. And that is critical because in order to really reach young people, we need to know what works from young people themselves. So one of the kind of first jobs of that youth forum will be to work with us on a kind of marketing and promotion campaign about, how do we raise awareness to young people that they can get support, and it doesn't necessarily have to be from a job centre, or an environment in which they might find uncomfortable. So that's really key to this programme.
Thank you. Really helpful. Next.
I obviously delighted that we're a trailblazer, and obviously delighted, that we have a focus on this particular age range. But the question when this was discussed, when I had, all the mayors together speaking with ministers, was the crossover between the sort of those who have ill health and those who are young. Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, I have a sort of element of a vested interest in this thing. And you've already talked about working with the partners at county council. I mean, or the city council of Peterborough. Yes, you will be just through records in terms of who's attending school, who's in college. That's the sort of information at hand. But not wanting to put a huge amount of extra work on my own colleagues in the NHS, be they in primary or secondary care. I can think of loads of examples of children who I've looked after who've gone into this age range, who you can almost see it's like a train crash coming. You can just see in there for whatever reasons. And I'll be honest, I don't remember ever kind of making plans with the family, talking about what are you doing. So the question I've got and the key is how would we, the Combined Authority, be reaching in to that cohort of young adults who are unwell, and how are we liaising with primary care and secondary care? And is that part of what we're looking at the design going forward? Because, and I am very much mindful that I would see it through those lens anyway. And it may well be that people are not in education, employment, because they just haven't found the right thing, that they're perfectly healthy. But you probably can understand I've got a particular interest in that, and an almost acknowledgement of a weakness of a system I currently work in as well. And I want to know how we can do that better.
So reaching out to young people with a range of health conditions, but especially mental health conditions, is a key priority for the Trailblazer. We've set it as one of our problem statements as such to the DfE and DWP, in terms of this is one thing we really need to tackle, because we know from looking at data from ONS that actually the prevailing factor for young people in that age group who are economically inactive, it's because of long-term health conditions, and mental health is a key factor. So very much like with Connect to Work, we need to work again with all health services to make sure that they're aware of what support can be available to young people that they're working with, and very much in a social prescribing sort of perspective, trying to work with the health sector to identify that employment could be part of the longer term solution to their mental health conditions once they're ready to access employment. And so that absolutely needs to be one of the sort of core areas of focus. And we know as well that so if we go out and should all the 18 to 21-year-olds, they're the COVID generation that hit them when they were doing their GCSEs. So they're those young people, GCSEs and A-levels, that perhaps didn't have access to work experience. They didn't have access to the other kind of range of opportunities that might have prepared them well for the world of work. So we've got those additional barriers and challenges to overcome as well. So it's an incredibly complex thing, but I think if we can use the Trailblazer year to really start to identify some key routes that we can really kind of push down over the next few years, because the Youth Guarantee is a long-term commitment from the government. It's been trialled in Europe as well. So we've got some learning there, and health has been a key factor of the work that's done. So yeah, a lot to do, but definitely a consideration.
I mean, my reflection on that is arguably one of the most difficult areas, because that group of that age group, that 16 to 25-year-olds, particularly those who come out of the paediatric coverage, and theoretically 16 is when that happens, depends on where you work, and then trying to get their health needs, if they've had chronic conditions, be it say a diabetes diagnosis or some other complicated, diagnoses. I think I couldn't even tell you what the current within the integrated care board, who sits with the transition of between children and adult services in terms of healthcare provision, and I strongly suspect that this is where the work that we're doing around this group of children, if as you say, there is a significant health influence on their ability to access work, we need to be particularly targeting and working with the integrated care board around transition, because that's, as I say, one that the NHS has regularly struggled. I've struggled to pass over children who I've looked after over many years into the adult world, be that through primary care or into adult hospital services.
Can I just say something? So for me, when I was putting the proposal together, I reflected on a lot of the work that I've done in a SEND space, and actually the work that's been done regionally and nationally around pathways to adulthood and preparing for adulthood. I think there's a lot we can learn from that, because actually they've been doing it well before this. Admittedly, for a group of young people who face significant challenges, and I appreciate that it's not always been done right or to the best of everybody's intentions, but certainly I think there are areas for us to learn around transition points for all young people from that work.
Thank you. I didn't see any other hands. And no one's put one up. Thank you very, very much for this update. I think this is a really, really important piece of work. But it is, as you were saying before, all of these will be more effective if they work together to support the different groups that need support into work. I think we've discussed those well. We don't have to vote, as was mentioned at the beginning. I hope that there can be a brief discussion now at the investment committee, because it's been quite well discussed here, so that's great. Thank you. We will move on to the attempt to say almost final item on the agenda, which is the budget and performance report. Do we have Bruno, or are you?
Over me.
Thank you, Rob. Great.
Thank you, Chair. And I won't take it personally that you didn't say you were excited by the budget update report as you did the previous item. And yes, apologies to the committee. Bruno's on a well-earned holiday, so unfortunately you have me this morning. I will try and stick to my script on that basis. The update set of accounts before you gives you the skills service income and expenditure budgets to the end of Q3, including the services forecast of the spend position at the end of the year. The vast majority of income for the year has been received at the end of Q3. That's absolutely normal. We receive our adult skills funding in a lump, usually in April or May time. So there's only the smaller bits that we claim in arrears, like the skills bootcamp, to come in after that. On the income side, we're currently forecasting to receive about 2.9 million less this year than was originally budgeted for. 2.8 million of that is from the skills bootcamps. Wave 4, there's a variance of 1.1 million, and this is due to enrolments on that earlier phase of boot camps not reaching the levels that we were originally anticipating. This is one where we claim in arrears based on actual milestones achieved with learners. We pay on the same basis to the providers, so you'll see a corresponding reduction in planned expenditure. So there's no net impact. It's not money not in, money not out, effectively. On the other side, as you've already heard from Nick, on the Wave 5 programme, there's a 1.7 million forecast under income this year, but those flexibilities that was discussed earlier that have been agreed with the FE mean that that can be brought forward into 2025-26 through to September 2025 of that year. The details of how the funding of the two programmes running in parallel will work is still being worked through. As you're aware, we only got it confirmed last week. So we are still doing the details, but we'll have them with you for your Q4 report. On the expenditure side of things, outside of the underspends associated with the two phases of boot camps, which I've just mentioned, the main one is the adult skills funding delivery budget. At the end of Q3, it was spending £3 million ahead of profile. The vast majority of that, 2.3 million, is just difference between the profile budget and actual expenditure. So it's timing. In your Q4 report, that 2.3 million difference will have vanished effectively as the budget catches up with actual expenditure. Balance then is £700,000 forecast overspend, driven by contracted overperformance of our ITPs. Probably rare to hear a finance officer tell you that overspend is a good news story. But historically, ASF provision in the area has underdelivered, and the combined authorities built up an ASF reserve, which enabled this committee, I think, probably 2 years ago now, to agree an over-contracting approach going forward, where ITPs have the commitment from us that if they over-deliver to a certain extent, we'll pay for it. This is exactly what's happened here. And the area has actually moved from a position of regular under-delivery to having the capacity and ability to over-deliver. It's a huge achievement, both from the skills team at the CPCA, which I can't take that credit, it's definitely these guys and Bruna, but also the providers they support in the area, of course. This clearly makes the disconnect between the capacity building success the combined authorities achieved since ASF was devolved and the reduction in funding we're receiving for 25-26 more pronounced. And I'm sure we will reflect on that when drafting the letter we're planning to send to the government. The committee is only asked to note the financial update, but I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm delighted that you mentioned that the overspend is a good thing, because it is somewhat unusual to be welcoming an overspend in this way, but it is very, very good news. And I think it's particularly, I mean, credit to the skills team, but also to the independent providers who've managed to deliver over and above what they were originally contracted to, and it's great. Any other comments on the budget? I think I do just want to reiterate what I said when we were discussing the boot camps, that the sort of frustrations around boot camp wave 4 have always been there. There's been a relatively consistent conversation, and it is very good that the wave 5 we are able to roll over, and with a bit of luck we'll end up with more than 1 year settlements, and we'll be able to do that differently in the future. That would be really good. Okay, I don't see any questions. Still don't see any questions, which is amazing. Thank you very much, Rob. That's wonderful. And then I think it really is the last thing on our agenda now is the Skills and Employment Committee work programme. Are there any comments, questions on this? I'm slightly worried. This is not our last one before the election, is it? We've got one more. It is our last one before the election.
Yeah.
Right.
It's in June.
It's quite a long gap.
Yeah.
And some of us will not be here afterwards. Nick is not restanding. I hope to be back, but I may not be either. So I think it's a good moment to say thank you, Nick, for all you've done working on this part of the programme at the Combined Authority. It has been the way in which the skills committee is managed, and the sort of the way in which the team work is transformed from 3.5 years ago, and we are in a much better place. So it's been a really good 3.5 years.
Chair, if you'd allow me to respond to that. Well, thank you for your kind words. I think I should also acknowledge, I think it was soon after May 21 when I chanced upon the idea that a deputy from like yourself would be a good idea from the point of view of leading on the skills. So I would reflect over that time and the journey. Your stewardship and your knowledge has been invaluable at taking us through some very challenging times. But as you have sort of highlighted, and the fact is that, you know, from the government at the moment, we have a trailblazer status. I could acknowledge many people along the way, the ups and downs and people who I miss. But at the moment, knowing that although I will not be coming back, I'm very grateful, and in the knowledge of people with yourself, Andrea, at the top there, but also Nick and many others of you, Alexis over there. I am enjoying my sort of final few weeks and months going along talking about internships, because I do think there's been a significant change, not just in the governance of this organisation, but also how we approach the challenge of delivering for the people of Cambridge and Peterborough. Dare I say it, it starts with compassion, and that's always a good way, I've always thought. So thank you.
Thank you. At which point we will close this meeting of the Skills Committee. Whether I'm back or not after May, I know that the Skills Committee will be in very good hands, because there are lots of people around this table who will make sure that that's the case. So thank you for your time this morning, and see you all again sometime somewhere. Thank you.